My name is Simon Double, and welcome to Inside the Rails, a monthly podcast for horse racing enthusiasts everywhere. And as ever, I'm joined by my co-host, Phil Boyle from BG Racing. Hi, Phil. How are you doing?
Hi, Simon. Yeah, all good, thank you. Not the best of months for me in terms of our horse's performance on the race course, but nevertheless enjoying the sunshine. And I picked up a new car last week. That's always nice as well.
Well, we'll come on to the horses shortly, but tell us more about this new car. Is it being maybe partly funded by some successful punting, possibly?
I wish it was. Fortunately, it's not costing too much more than the previous one because it's a new Skoda Enyaq fully electric. So whilst my lease payments are a little bit more expensive, the petrol payments are considerably less, as you might imagine. So, yeah, the range on a full battery is just over 300 miles. So whilst you jokes last month about the number of miles I clock up as a racing manager, I think I'm now going to have to do a bit more planning. I might need some charging stops on some of those longer journeys. But I wanted to make sure I could get down to Neil Mulholland's yard in Bath and back so I could see Dynamic Kate without needing a charge. So most of my journey should be no problem. And I can charge the car up at home from my solar panels. So, yeah, very cheap to run and a very comfortable place to spend my time.
Very environmentally friendly. Well done, you. You sound very pleased with your new acquisition. Let's just hope the charging stops aren't a problem. Now, very much looking forward to having our very special guest, Annalisa Balding, fresh from Royal Ascot. She's the wife of Royal trainer Andrew Balding, and she'll be joining us a little later.
Yes, it'll be interesting to chat to Annalisa. I chat to her again, actually. She probably won't remember, but I sat next to her at an ownership event at Newbury Racecourse several years ago. We chatted briefly at that time. So, yeah, it'd be good to talk to her again. And if any of our listeners didn't see the Amazon Prime documentary Horsepower, that was based around the Balding's yard. It's a really interesting insight into a top racing yard. And, perhaps we'll get some more of that insight from Annalisa today.
I'm sure we will. I actually was fortunate enough to meet both Annalisa and Andrew Balding at their Kingsclear stables back in May. We had a thoroughly enjoyable morning there. Phil, the place was so big that they needed a golf buggy to ferry people around. But I also had a very good tasty cooked breakfast. Now, let's turn to the BG runners, and I detect some frustration, Phil.
Yes, you detect correctly. It was a very frustrating month for me. We got Sajwan back from a break to run at Brighton. We had high hopes for him there. He managed to dash those pretty quickly. He didn't seem to enjoy the downhill run that comes at halfway at Brighton, and he showed a bit of bad attitude in the home straight. He almost pulled himself up when he got behind. It was a bit of a head scratcher. There's a couple of things we can try to see if we can get him back to the level we know he's capable of, but that wasn't very good. And we followed it up with Dynamic Kate running at Fontwell. She'd won there twice last year. Again, we went there with high hopes. And while she jumped well and travelled beautifully, the jockey commented afterwards that he was almost sure he was going to win in the back straight, but then she had an issue with her breathing. Obviously, it's hard to run when you can't get the air in, and she ended up finishing well behind. So she's had a small operation to address that issue, and hopefully that'll help her next time.
Well, look, you and I, along with anybody who works in racing, be it a trainer, jockey, owner, know that there are plenty of lows, which make the highs even sweeter when they come along. Let's hope the pendulum swings upwards very soon for BG Racing.
Thanks, I hope so. Yeah, we'll have to just keep plugging away. On the plus side, we should get to meet our new mare, who will in time replace Dynamic Kate. She's back in training this month, so I've got that to look forward to. Can I hope you had a better month than me on the racecourse?
Broadly, yes. It was a bit mixed. We started off very well with Tarantino just being beaten the neck at Yarmouth on the first of the month, so that was very exciting. But not for the first time he played up beforehand. So, and I know you'll have seen this on social media, Amy Murphy, the trainer, went and bought a goat as a companion to try and calm him down. The staff have called him Gary, so it's Gary the goat, and he's a wether, which is a castrated goat. So you have geldings, which are castrated horses, but wether is a castrated goat. There you go. They seem to get on well. They haven't been together that long, and the two of them travelled together to Sandown when Tarantino was running the week before Royal Ascot. Unfortunately, Tarantino again was tricky to saddle, and Phil, the writing was on the wall when he was expending far too much energy in the paddock, and he ran no sort of race. It is early days with Gary the Goat, and hopefully as time goes on, Tarantino will calm down.
I did indeed read about Gary the Goat, and I noticed on Twitter that Solario Racing was talking about selling shares of Gary. So how do I get into that?
In a whimsical moment, I did indeed post something to that effect, just my sense of humour. No, I will be definitely sticking to horses. And talking of which, we also ran Sharp Distinction since the last podcast. And he ran a cracker at Kempton from a very wide draw to be third, given a great ride by Billy Loughnane. First time that young lad has ridden for Solario Racing. And very good he was too after the race. Look, with all this fast ground around at present, we'll have to stick to the all-weather with Sharp Distinction for the moment, if we can find a suitable race. However, the fast ground should suit Dancing in the Woods, who makes his seasonal reappearance at Newmarket in a couple of days' time.
Great stuff. I'm glad Billy got a better result on the Solario Racing horse than he managed when he rode Sajwen for us, and unfortunately Sajwen had a bad day that day. I hope we can both land a winner in the coming months. But yes, we're recording this the week after Royal Ascot, which I know you treat as your equivalent of Cheltenham. So did you manage to attend this year?
Absolutely, it's my Cheltenham. And I did. I went there on the Friday to help a friend of mine, Steve Surridge, who runs Eclipse Sports Promotions, and they have a couple of horses in training with Amy Murphy. It was actually Steve who introduced me to Amy about 3 years ago. He was hosting some hospitality, as he always does, for some 50 clients. So I talked through the card, tried to steer them in the direction of a few winners, which amazingly I did, because it's a very competitive meeting, as you know. In fact, I gave them 4 winners, and in one race gave the runner-up as well. It was a great day's racing, as indeed it was all week.
Yeah, it certainly was. I only managed to watch most of it on catch-up last week. I very inefficiently managed to schedule things that clashed with the action most afternoons, but I was pleased to note several winners for Frankie Dettori and Ryan Moore, although frustratingly not the ones I had bets on. And I was delighted to see a second-place finish for our recent guests, Daniel and Claire Kubler, whose horse Don't Tell Claire was second on the Wednesday.
Yes.
And from a podcast perspective, I noticed 2 of your horses to follow were second and fourth in the opening race on Wednesday.
Yes, 2 two-year-olds. Relief Rally, trained by Willie Haggis, was beaten a nose. And Juniper Berry's another 2-year-old that I tipped up or said to follow, trained by Eve Johnson Houghton. That was fourth in the same race, very well backed from 40-1 into 18-1. So, yeah, not bad, because it is a very competitive meeting, so I was quite chuffed with that.
Hopefully the gamble on Juniper Berries was all the Inside the Rails listeners wading on. So,
maybe.
I'm glad that some of the listeners are getting some value out of the horses to follow again. But, away from them, what were your highlights from the Royal meeting?
Well, there were certainly some very big price winners. You had 80-1 Cardam winning the Jubilee Stakes and 150-1 winner of the Norfolk and Valiant Force. But apart from the big price winners, it was quite tough for punters, I think. There are always some great stories, and I think 2 of the best were probably on the Thursday. Well, undoubtedly, I think on the Thursday, when the King and Queen had a royal winner, Desert Hero, trained by Willie Haggis, who won the appropriately named King George V handicap. That's their very first Royal Ascot winner, obviously in just their first year since the Queen died. And on the same day, the irrepressible Frankie winning the Gold Cup on Courage Mon Ami for the Gosdens, and that's his 9th Gold Cup. Can you believe it?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, both fantastic highlights, really. What about on the track? Were there any performances you were really impressed with?
Well, you had to be taken with Mostadaf, an impressive 4-length winner of the Prince of Wales Stakes. And I think you'll appreciate this, Phil, because you like ratings and times. I couldn't work out why he was such a big price when he only had up to £2 to find with his rivals. I did avail myself of a double-figure price. And he was an impressive winner. Let's see if he can follow it up. There were lots of impressive winners, there always are, but I'll also give a mention to Pile Driver, who I always think is underrated. He'd been off the track for 336 days when winning the Hardwick Stakes, although he did have to survive a steward's inquiry, but I think he was always going to keep it. But those 2 were impressive, I think.
Good stuff. And it sounds like you obviously really enjoyed the week. The quality of the participants is going to be slightly down on Royal Ascot, but of course the next big meeting that we've both got to look forward to is the next Racehorse Syndicates Association Syndicate Day at Nottingham on the 21st of July. So, we've been very busy organising that one, haven't we?
Yes, indeed. RSA members will be there with their trade stands. I know both you and I will be there. And Solaria Racing is actually sponsoring a race. It should be a great day out, and it's only a fiver to get in.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope it'll be a great day. If anybody listening out there is thinking of joining a syndicate and you're not too far away from Nottingham, do please come along. We're always happy to help you understand more about shared ownership, and we'll chat to anybody, whether or not you're interested in getting involved in ownership. So don't be worried about a hard sell.
Yes, one thing we can guarantee, you definitely won't get any hard sell from either Phil or myself. As I did mention, it's only a fiver to get in, so do come along, come and chat to either Phil, myself, or both of us, and we'll just talk very generally about shared ownership and how you can get involved. Right, it's that time of day to welcome our very special guest, fresh from Royal Ascot, Annalisa Balding. Hello, Annalisa, how are you?
It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. First of all, did you survive Ascot? An extremely busy week, I guess, always.
Yeah, we did. We had a great time, and it was great fun. We were lucky. We were blessed with lovely weather, and it was a monster week, but we've survived.
Excellent. Secondly, how do we pronounce your 2,000 Guineas winner? Chaldean? Please put us right.
Apparently, the best way of saying it is, the Italian wine region Chianti. You don't say Chianti.
Oh, yes.
You don't say Chianti. You say Chianti, and you don't say Chaldean. You say Chaldean.
Okay.
So that's the way to remember it.
Okay, so it is Chaldean, is it? Not Chaldean, it's Chaldean. Yeah.
It's Chaldean. It's a
Chaldean.
It's a tribe. Anyway, it's been quite a sort of talked about thing, and he is a horse that's changed his name on regular occasions, but he doesn't really know that. So he
Okay.
He's still Dino. Well, he's still Dino at home.
Excellent. Now, Dino, or Chaldean, was second in the Group 1 St James's Palace Stakes, one of 3 seconds that the yard had at the Royal Meeting, the others being St George in the Queen's Vase and Coltrane in the Gold Cup. Now, unfortunately, no winners at the meeting from 26 runners, but to put that into perspective for our listeners, Godolphin, a huge operation, also didn't have a winner, coincidentally, from 26 runners. So those stats alone tell how difficult it is to have a winner at this meeting, don't they?
They do, absolutely. It is always disappointing when you don't have a winner. But, the great thing that flat racing has is they have lots of different festivals. And yes, Royal Ascot is really important, but we're lucky we go quickly on to another festival and then another. And, it's a long season, and as I say, it is disappointing. But to have 3 seconds in 2 of the Group 1s was I suppose retrospectively great. It wasn't what we wanted, but when I saw Frankie for lunch on Saturday, and I said I could think of better people to sit next to than you this week, having got our horse beaten on the Tuesday, beaten us on the Wednesday and the Thursday. And we did laugh.
He cheered up a bit, Frankie, didn't he? He wasn't too clever, according to his children, after the first day. He was a bit the old lower lip was on the floor, apparently.
Yeah.
But, he had a good week in the end, didn't he?
He did.
Now, look, I was fortunate to have a very enjoyable tour of Kingsclere Stables back in May, and thank you both very much for that, you and Andrew. You're married to the trainer, Andrew Balding, but what's the Annalisa story into racing?
I sort of fell into it, I suppose. Everything, it's sort of, I was going out with a good friend of Andrew's for 5 years, and we split up, and Andrew sort of said, "Oh, don't worry, come and stay with me." And so I came to stay with him, and I grew up very local to Kingsclere, and I sort of ended up marrying the boy next door, really. It wasn't the sort of, being a trainer's wife didn't grab me. We were together for 5 years before we got married or got engaged. I needed a little bit of persuasion that cooking bacon sandwiches every day of my life and never having a husband off his mobile phone. But anyway, there are lots of positives, and obviously I made a fantastic decision.
Well, I have to say I can swear by the bacon sandwiches. The cooked breakfast was excellent that I had. But I know there's a lot more to your role. You're head of operations at Kingsclere. That's quite a grand title. Can you explain to our listeners what that involves? I suspect it involves an awful lot.
I have to chuckle when I hear it, because the only reason why I'm head of operations is, we did a sort of TV show recently, and they didn't know what to write. So the producer just came up with head of operations, which I think is actually incredibly accurate. I know it sounds very grand, which I'm definitely not, and it's not a grand. My position isn't grand, but I do a lot of operational side of the business. And I suppose if the swimming pool leaks, or if a loo breaks, or if a field shelter falls down, or a manger comes off the wall, I suppose, I do get called. And that is, I suppose that's the operations. So I think, that is my role at home.
And I know that when I came round to Kingsclere and had that tour, I was very impressed by the things that you collectively, you and Andrew, lay on for the staff in terms of, a cricket match and a gym I think you'd had built during COVID. So, there's a lot, presumably, you get involved on the staff side of things, HR, if you will.
Yeah? Absolutely. I mean, Andrew's very much does the horses and I do the humans. And I think it's very well known that, happy horses cannot be happy without happy staff. And I think that's the bottom line. And I think we owe it to our fantastic team to try and give them as good a life as possible. And whether it's cricket matches or, as you say, gym or fitness lessons or anything like that, it's all very, very helpful. And, it's Kingsclere's like a sort of community. We all live on site. It's very important to have fun outside work as well. So we try very hard. And last night we had a guy came down and gave a talk on gambling. Tonight we've got tennis coaching at 6:15, and then we've got Martin Dwyer coming over to give the riders all a bit of a lesson tomorrow. So there's a lot. I think it's important, and we're very lucky. We have an amazing team, but I hope it's because we give a little bit more to them.
And we're not talking 20 or 30 staff. You've got over 90 staff, haven't you, if memory serves me right?
Yeah, absolutely. And they range from 16 to 82.
Wow.
We've got Pat Maguire's been with us for over 50 years, and he's 82, and he mucks out 4 boxes every morning.
Unbelievable. It's amazing, isn't it? I love hearing stories like that in racing. Really good. And I know also, we've seen each other at the races. You go a lot, presumably, when Andrew can't go, or is at another race meeting. Looking after owners is a big part of your role as well, I guess, at the track.
Yeah. It is, absolutely. And a lot of people say, why doesn't Andrew go racing? He does go racing as much as he can. But the bottom line is I can't train the horses. That's his job. And, very often you have to leave very early to go racing, especially up north. And I can go and realistically anyone can put on a saddle and leg a jockey up. But as you say, it's very important to be there for the owners. More often, the importance is when the horse doesn't run well. And you're sort of picking up the pieces a little bit. It's more important you're there.
Yes,
but,
absolutely.
Between us, we try and cover as many meetings as we can, hard at times. But I love going racing and possibly a little bit more than Andrew does.
I remember the late Henry Cecil. So Henry Cecil, he often said that he didn't particularly enjoy racing. He enjoyed being with the horses. I don't know if you remember him saying that.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, well, I think Andrew feels as well, people are paying him to train their horses, not sit on the M6 in a traffic jam. So that's his excuse.
It is all sounding really familiar to me. I used to be an operations manager and then an operations director, and I'm now realising it wasn't just me that had everything that wasn't specialist thrown at them. So I'm glad to find out it wasn't just me, and that everybody with operations in their title gets the same experience.
Yeah, we should discuss this further at some point.
But yeah, Annalisa, I know a lot of our listeners will have seen yourself and some of the staff in the Amazon Prime documentary Horsepower, which I certainly enjoyed, and I know was filmed over a period of time at the stables. But can you tell us how that came about? How long were the film crew with you, and what was it like for you, Andrew, and the team?
It was actually an amazingly positive and enjoyable time. It was about a year the cameras were with us. Equine Productions and John Maxey sort of approached us early on. We didn't jump at it. It was a very, very risky thing to do. We got lucky. But I genuinely, both Andrew and I felt that, racing's very critical of themselves and other people within the sport. And, they've been complaining about the staff situation and about prize money and about media rights and all this. But actually, what have we as in the industry done about it? And I sort of felt that we owed it to the industry to try and get ourselves out there, try and explain to the world that racing is the most inclusive of all sports. There is something for anybody. It doesn't matter if you're male, female, left-handed, right-handed, blonde, dark, straight, gay, black, white. It doesn't matter. There is something for absolutely everybody, and you are never labelled. And I think that's something that I feel racing should be very, very proud of. And you only have to come to our gallops and look round and see the variety, and it is wonderful. And I hope that was what it came out of the documentary.
Yeah, I think it did. It was very noticeable that a lot of people from different backgrounds, different personalities, but all enjoying the experience in the same way. Which I agree with you. It's what racing's all about, I think. Now, you've got a lot of horses at Kingsclear, and I know many of them are owned by syndicates. I know you've got horses for Highclere, Hot to Trot Racing, Thurlow Thoroughbreds. I'm sure you were working on Simon when he was there to get a Solario racing horse soon. So,
to be fair, no, there was no hard sell there. But maybe that's to come later at the end of the podcast.
Exactly.
And I know you've also got a racing club there as well. How important do you think syndicates are to the well-being of British racing?
I think syndicates are so important. I'm not saying they're the be-all and end-all to racing, but I think the fact that so many people can dip their toe in and sort of have a taste of it and gives them an opportunity to become hooked or become further. And, there's lots of stepping stones thanks to the syndicates. I would say, England don't quite do syndicates like Australia do yet. I think it'll come. I think it's, ARC have done very well at sort of doing the syndicate rooms, because as much as we love syndicates and we, great people, but they're not, they're not putting into the sport what these individual owners are going. And I do think it's important that they get a slightly different treatment at the races. Not that, they all deserve something, but putting, someone who has 25 individual horses in training against someone who's invested £68 it's a difficult line, but I think we'll get there, and I think it's important. I also think the other thing about syndicates is, you probably have 2 or 3 years chance to have a good horse with a syndicate. And if 2 years and they've invested and nothing's happened, they'll probably go back to, their season ticket at Molineux or whatever. I think, whereas I think when you become an owner, you've got a longer sort of commitment, individual owner.
That's interesting, you comparing to Australia. We had Francesca Cumani on as one of our podcast guests, and she said, if memory serves me right, about 1 in 180 people in Australia has a share in a racehorse.
Fantastic.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
I just love to think that one day we can do the same. It's a big challenge, but there's no reason why we couldn't.
That's exactly what she said, and I echo that sentiment.
I tell you, the other day, just quickly, we had a great winner called Scampy, who won at the Dante meeting. It was just the most moving thing. There were 50 people there. There were people crying. A woman who said she'd been given it for her 50th birthday present. It was her first ever day's racing. And then on the Saturday, we had a morning down at home. And it was just so special. And it really made us all think, this is as good as, our biggest owner having a big winner. It's great. So I think there's something for everyone.
And I think really syndicates often are a platform, aren't they, into sole ownership. I know people who started off in elite racing, with thousands,
absolutely,
and ended up becoming single owners.
We've got some at Kingsclear, absolutely.
Now, we've loved having you on, Eloise, so thank you so much for your time. Finally, a question we like to ask all of our guests. If you could change 3 things in British racing, and 3 things only, please, 3 things to benefit British racing, what would they be?
It's a difficult one because as a sort of trainer's wife, we see a very different side to a lot of other people. But I think, sadly, that the one thing I'd like to see better is communication between all the different parties and us all singing off the same hymn sheet, because ultimately we're all doing something for this. We're all in the same industry, and I just find it very, very disjointed. So I would love a better communication channel. I would love that someone to get on top of, which hopefully Whirlpool will, as the betting situation and the media rights, because it just seems farcical when you compare English prize money to other places around the world, when it's very openly known that the British racing is as good as anywhere else is. And thirdly, I'm not a big fan of owners and trainers coffee. I would love better coffee.
I'm only laughing because that's a really left field suggestion, and I love it. It's great. Not the coffee. I love your suggestion.
So that's, I'd spend a lot of time in owners and trainers bars drinking water, hot water, lukewarm.
I'll see if I can put a word in when I'm next at a racecourse in O&T. Listen, we've
That's
loved
a bit unfair. Some of them do well.
Yeah. Listen, we've loved having you on, as I said. Thank you so much. You got a runner at Newbury. Are you racing yourself today?
I am. Yeah, I am actually. Andrew's gone off for a few days. I'm staying with some clients at post Ascot, so I've been left at home. But I'm actually I've got a couple of hours to watch our second son play. Hopefully, score a few runs at school before going to Newbury to watch Lady of Leisure in the 640.
Excellent. Well, look, you alluded to earlier on that there are lots of festivals, so we wish you luck at Goodwood and the Ebor meeting and all the other festivals there are throughout the year, and hope you will have a good year. Thank you for joining us.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Well, Phil, yet again, another lovely guest. I thought Annalisa would be a good guest. Indeed, she was. Gave us a really good insight into being a trainer's wife. Loved her 3 suggestions to improve British racing. The first one, communication channels, all for that. She slightly threw me about the coffee in the owners and trainers. I thought that was quite left field, as I said earlier on, but a good point.
Absolutely. And hopefully with somebody like Annalisa behind the movement, we can look forward to baristas operating in owners and trainers bars around the country going forward. So, yeah, very good interview. And as usual, I'd like to round off the podcast by asking the listeners for some likes, follows, and preferably good reviews on the podcast. We also welcome people getting in touch on Twitter. You can contact us there at Inside the Rails, or we've always got the contact details in our show notes if you would look on the platform that you downloaded the show from. So all support welcome. We're always looking to grow. The more people you can tell, the more people we'll be reaching going forward. So thanks for that.
Well, that just leaves me to thank co-host Phil Boyle from BG Racing, our very special guest Annalisa Balding, producer Callum Ronan from Callum Ronan Creative, and of course, you, the listeners. They say fairy tales don't come true, but at Royal Ascot last week, they did. Their Majesties had a royal winner, the underrated pile driver again showed his class, and the irrepressible Lanfranco de Tori won the Gold Cup for the 9th time at his last Royal Ascot. This is Simon Double from Solario Racing saying, thank you for listening to Inside the Rails, and until next time, goodbye.